that's not him.
She drove a new car home.
Yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Cherie and I am obsessed with true crime. So welcome to True Crime Anonymous. I know that some of my listeners are not native speakers. I'm here with my friend Leo, who is also not a native speaker. So we will be explaining, well, what was that? I was having a stroke. We will be explaining some of the more difficult words, or I will be putting like a definition here on screen. I will also link a post down below where I explain those words and I will put sample sentences. So today, nothing, absolutely nothing went as planned, okay? I wanted to taste test something that I cooked, something keto, because this is basically a recipe channel. I've only ever uploaded recipes in the past, but then I made keto rice dumplings because yesterday, as we're filming now, is Dragon Boat Festival, but I realized by the time we upload this, Dragon Boat Festival will be long gone, and it's gonna be really weird. Yeah, so, and then my oven broke down, so I couldn't make meatloaf, and I saw this post that Rododo was having a sale, so I skedaddled across the street and bought enough food for 5 people because I was hungry. So the lesson is do not shop for food when you're hungry. We have here boneless chicken thighs, flat iron beef, pork shoulder, shrimp, clams, and basa fish. So I actually went here a few months ago with Aries. I'll link that blog post down below. I had the mala soup last time with the stir-fried garlic chicken soup. But today we have I think it's called like vegetable energy soup. It's slow cooked with vegetable puree and chicken stock for like hours. And is this ever going to boil? I feel like, is it hot? Yeah. Okay, I went there and I got this, and I will actually be doing a gift certificate giveaway with Rododo on my Instagram in a few days, so I will link it down below. I think this video is going to come out before the post. So some of you may know that I'm allergic to seafood, but I have tried this before. I am okay with having soup that their seafood is cooked in because their seafood is pretty fresh. And here we also have cognac noodles that I bought on Shopee because it's basically dietary fiber and no carbs, so we can eat this. When I was trying to get turkey breast on Shopee, I also got these. It's dripping great, my dress. It's turkey meatballs, so we're gonna try that too. For the first episode of True Crime Anonymous, I originally wanted to do a Taiwanese case because Taiwanese cases don't get covered a lot because we have to wait for this to boil so that we can eat. Really? Okay, I'm going to cover it so it boils faster and we can eat. And you can use that for the fish because it kind of like swims away. Yeah. So I originally wanted to do a Taiwanese case. Right? They don't get covered a lot because our court documents are not open to the public. You don't know. And I was going to do it with my friend Rosie because she actually goes to the same school as the murderer. But then Rosie called me like 2 days ago and she said that her roommate got cornfield. I'm not going to say the word because I don't want to get flagged. There you go. And she had no symptoms, but then she tested positive, so she's not here with me today. I'm going to save that case for next week. Today we're going to talk about a female serial killer, and she's actually said to be the first female serial killer. And they made a movie about her called Monster, starring Charlize Theron, and Charlize Theron actually won an Oscar for that. And they made another movie last year called The American Boogie Woman. It was starring Peyton List. Do you know Peyton List? Do you watch Disney? Yeah, it's like the blonde chick from Jessie, and then she's always really preppy, but this time she was a serial killer. Today we're talking about Eileen Wuornos, and the media actually called her the damsel of death, which is very femme fatale. But it's not really a romantic story. So we're just gonna pause and wait for this to boil so we can eat while we tell the story. I don't really know if it's a good idea to talk about dead people when we're eating. Like,
vegetables first.
Yeah, vegetables first. Okay, so you can actually get cabbage, or like you can get vegetables, or you can get these. I don't even know what they're called. These stuff that we put in hot pot. It's an Asian thing. But we also, yeah, it's called huoguoliao. So we also got vegetables, like you know, we have vegetables in my fridge. So today's story all starts with Diane Warnos. When Diane was 15, she eloped with her 18-year-old boyfriend named Leo Pittman.
Oh, what's up called Leo?
Yeah, he's called Leo. So Leo, though, is this emotionally and physically abusive piece of shit.
Not me.
He's a nice guy, and he's single.
Not
Okay.
every Leo is
Okay, I know a lot of people are going to, at this point, say, why didn't Diane just leave, right? But that's not how abusive relationships work, because abusive relationships are actually enforced by insecurities on both sides. So the abuser typically are abusive because they are trying to enhance their own self-worth by being the one in control. And the one who is abused, they are trying to be submissive. They're trying to give the abuser what they want to show their own worth, because that's where their self-worth comes from. And they're also really afraid of being abandoned. In 1955, Diane has her first son, Keith. And in less than a year, she was again pregnant with our serial killer, Eileen. So she was pregnant with Eileen. During this time, Leo's true colors finally got discovered by the public. He was actually arrested for raping an underage girl. So he's a pedophile.
So Ellie is our
Serial
main
killer.
character.
Yeah, Ellie is going to be our main character. And we know childhood trauma does a lot of shit to us. You can, like, let it rest. I just wanted to show everyone the food. So he was convicted of raping a 7-year-old girl, and he was actually suspected of the murder of another little girl. And while he was in prison, he killed himself.
Oh.
You don't want to go through trial. He killed himself. During this time, I think we can start eating. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to get some food first. You go ahead. Do you want pork or beef?
No.
Do you want vegetables?
Fruits.
I'm a meat person. I like it very, very undercooked, pink, like this. Alright, so I like the soup. It's actually it does have a very strong chicken taste. Yeah.
That's sweet.
Yeah, right? And then I think it goes well with the soup. Okay, I should keep telling the story. Eileen was born. This is the third time. February 29th, 1956, and she has never met her abusive father, but Diane was properly fucked up at this point, and by 1960, she actually abandons her children. So she leaves Keith and Eileen with her parents, so their grandparents, named Lowry and Britta. She just left. She never shows up again in the rest of the story. I mean, I think she was probably trying to do it for the good of them, though, because she probably thought, like, oh, my parents are probably more capable of taking care of my children. Eileen and Keith were actually told that their grandparents are their actual parents, and Diane was their older sister. Britta, which is Eileen's grandma, it was said that she just doted on Eileen. She really loved that girl. She gave her all the time in the world. Maybe I should cook this because it takes longer for chicken. Let's put that in. And she gave her all the attention that Eileen never got from her mother, Diane. And the reason why Britta had so much time on her hands, though, is because Britta was an alcoholic. So she was unemployed. And at this point in the story, I started getting very agitated because Eileen is really close to her grandma. She's also really close to her brother, Keith. But her grandfather, Lowry, was also an alcoholic. So it's just, how is this entire family alcoholic and no authorities interfered with them just having 2 little kids? Like, it's just, oh, it's fine. The government doesn't know about it. We're just going to let these alcoholics raise this kid. And then Lowry is also a human piece of shit. Lowry is just kind of like Leo from earlier in today's story. Yeah, Lowry is kind of like Eileen's birth father. He is also abusive. And he actually raped Eileen when she was a child. Not just like raped, he like repeatedly sexually assaulted her. So that he is also a pedophile, because at this point when Eileen started living living with her grandparents. She was only 4. Yeah, she was only 4 when she started living with her grandparents. I don't really know if Britta knows about the sexual assault, because if she did nothing to stop it. But also, people in abusive relationships, sometimes they're probably unable to stop it, like how he's just gonna beat her up too. So we don't know about that. Troy, Michigan is where they're living. So in this area, they're on the outskirts of town. There is this place called the Pits, and all of the cool kids would hang out there. And of course, Eileen was never invited, but ever since she was 11, she would go. She wasn't invited, but it's a public area, right? She would go, but she'd show up in these ill-fitting clothes, and everyone just made fun of her. One day, she waited until her alcoholic grandfather passed out, and she went to the Pits. And everyone would be there. They would just be smoking and drinking. Obviously, it's underage drinking because they're all students. None of them are above 21. Eileen went there, and she actually worked up the courage to go up to this older teenage boy and ask for a cigarette. And he said yes. But you think he's just going to give it to her for free out of the goodness of his heart? Not like smoking is great for you or anything, but you know what I mean. Of course not. He says that she can have one, but she has to pay for it. But with money, which Eileen does not have, of course not. With sex. So they went deeper into the woods, and 20 minutes later, Eileen came out with a cigarette. So she sits down with her classmates, and someone actually passes her a beer, and all of the boys were catcalling her and staring at her, but she was okay with it because people were finally looking at her. She was finally getting attention. She even got invited back next week. Wait. I can't wink, actually. It just looks like I have some eye issue when I try to wink. So, and after this, she just kind of, around the town, she's known as a sex worker, because she would just have sex with anyone who would give her cigarettes and beer and stuff like that. And I'm not saying like sex work is bad or anything, but at this point she's 11, so it's obviously statutory rape. Statutory rape. Why can't I say that? Okay, it's obviously statutory rape. Yeah, like statutory means it is legally considered as rape, no matter if the other party consented or not, because she's under the legal age of consent. It also applies to people who are mentally incapable, like they mentally do not have the capacity to consent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is obviously statutory rape, and some of her clients are probably not even teenagers. But her classmates obviously did not just consider her a sex worker. They called her all kinds of terrible names, just slut, whore, Around this time, she has no friends. She has no real friends. She only has Britta and Keith. And so guess what happens next? She has no self-worth. Finally, she has a reputation built up around sex. She starts sleeping with Keith. Who's Keith? Her brother. Yeah. So she starts fucking her older brother. So they're both underage. So I'm not saying that I don't think he took advantage of her. He's only a year older, right? He's 12. It's just fucked up. Yeah, and I was thinking why? But I'm not a licensed psychologist or therapist, right? But I'm thinking that probably she has no self-worth. She built it up with sex. She thinks I have nothing to give but sex, and this is a person I love, right? And I sleep with all of those boys in class. Why would I sleep with my brother?
She wants to get attention.
Yeah. This is in 1968. Okay, when she was 12, she starts sleeping with her older brother Keith. So we don't know what that is, but that is definitely incest. When she was 14. In 1971, her grandfather decided raping her just wasn't enough. He decided to start introducing her to his friends. So his friends were raping her too, and one of his friends actually got Eileen pregnant. So it's not like it's 1968. It's not like you can just go to Planned Parenthood and get an abortion. So Eileen was made fun of by all of her classmates. Everyone thinks that she probably got knocked up by one of those teenage boys who she tried to get cigarettes from. She has no resources, so she went to this shelter for battered women, and she gave birth to a healthy baby boy, but it was immediately given up for adoption, so she never actually met her son. have this chili over here. It's my favorite. I eat it with everything. And it goes so well with the soup because it's just spicy. It doesn't really have its own flavor. And the soup has this really rich chicken taste, and it's so good. Yeah, just try it, but just a little bit because my mom says it's really, really spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's really good. I have a very high spice tolerance.
Unbelievable.
Like they would come over for Christmas dinner and they'd be like, "What is this? This is so sweet." Like,
Yeah. Every thing is spicy.
Which even the salad is spicy. After she gives birth to her son, she goes back home, but her grandmother ends up passing away from liver cancer because she's an alcoholic. You remember that? So now all she has left is Keith. Her support system is getting, weaker and weaker, which was, pretty non-existent to begin with. I like to do this thing with my beef where I just put it raw in my bowl and put hot boiling soup on it so that it cooks. Kind of like how they do pho. So she goes home, her grandmother dies, so at this point, of course, she starts acting out. She starts running away from home a lot, and she's just hitchhiking to get around, and she's exchanging sex work for these trips. But I think it's the really sad part is she was still trying to finish high school, like even though she was acting out. And at high school, she actually makes her very first friend. Her name is Dawn Watkins, and she actually becomes pretty important down the line, so just keep that in mind. Oh, it looks so good. Look, it's all pink and stuff. Would you eat it this raw? Yeah, I like it really raw. It sounds raw. That sounded raw. Yeah, this is the beef. This is beef. You can't eat chicken. You can't eat pork raw. But I think the soup wasn't hot enough. Alright, I'm gonna do that a little bit. Okay, so she makes her first friend, Dawn Watkins, and this actually really gave Eileen a self-esteem boost because she's like, well, I have a friend. If Dawn likes me, maybe the other kids can like me too. I just need to let them see me. So she takes all the money she made from sex work and she buys a bunch of cigarettes and beer. And she throws a house party. She invited everyone from the pits to come. What do you think happened? Do you think anyone would come?
I think everyone
Yeah.
for free drinks.
Yep, everyone came for the free drinks and cigarettes. And Dawn said she's never seen Eileen so happy in her entire life. But then some popular boys arrived, and they grabbed Eileen by the throat and threw her out of the back door and locked her out. So they locked her in her own backyard while they just partied in her house, drank her beer, and smoked her cigarettes. And at this point, I was thinking, like, how come nobody helped her? It's her party. But then, I don't know if I would have helped her. Even if I didn't hate her, like the rest of the people, if it's peer pressure, I'd probably make fun of her like the rest of the people. I don't know, but even then, they're like the popular boys. I can't fight. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
So Diane feels like there's nothing left for her in Troy, Michigan. And she decides to leave. In 1971, Eileen was 15. She starts hitchhiking just wherever. And of course, she was paying for these rides and using sex. And she ended up in Colorado. During this period, Eileen was actually soliciting on the highways. Like, she's not being very discreet. And she was arrested several times, but not for soliciting. not for being a prostitute. No, she was arrested several times for petty theft and bar fights, which I don't know. It's kind of weird, right? Like, she's just waving people down on the highway, but she never got. Like, the police are just like, oh, there's a girl on the highway. It's probably nothing. It's just police are corrupt. No. So she was practically homeless during this time as well, and she was just sleeping in abandoned cars, in the woods, and she would take showers in the gas station. If you guys have ever been, or if you live there, or you've heard, Colorado is really cold in the winter. It's really not a great place to be homeless. Not like there's great places to be homeless, but it's just worse. So in 1976, in winter, Eileen hitchhikes to Florida because it's always really hot in Florida. I went there once in winter. It was not winter. It was hot. It was really hot during the day. It's kind of cold at night. This is when I actually thought she was going to turn her life around. I don't know why I was thinking this because I do know that she ends up to be a serial killer. But at this point I was like, oh, it looks like her life is going to turn around because she meets this man called Louis Fell. Louis Fell is an old rich guy. He's 69 years old and he's a yachtsman. So he drives yachts. Right? He's obviously rich, and after they've known each other for a couple months, just a few months, they got married in May. It's like a summer wedding. They even had a photo of Eileen and Louis in the newspaper and on the society page. They had a photo of them. So Eileen is, doing well for where she started from. But 9 weeks later, Louis Fell files a restraining order against Eileen because he said that she beat him with his own cane, because he's like pushing 70, right? So he has a cane. Eileen beat him with it, and she threw a cue ball at a bartender's head. A cue ball is a ball, but it's a microphone. And they use this in classes so you can just toss it to people and yeah, so you have more engagement, whoever has the ball speaks, and she threw it at a bartender's head. He got the marriage annulled. So basically it means you don't even need to get a divorce. You just tell the court, like, can we pretend that didn't happen? Like, that was a mistake. Let's just pretend that never happened. So it's like they were never married.
If you did this thing in 2018, come on.
Yeah, she would probably be arrested, but she did it at the time. Like, it's just a restraining order. Are you thinking of, like, Amber Heard?
There isn't any news.
Yeah, it was just, wow. Did you watch the trial?
Yeah.
I watched the whole thing. It was really messed up. So, she started doing sex work again, and they actually said, like, Eileen was back on the streets so soon, her clients didn't even notice that she was gone. Like, they didn't even know she was married. They just thought, oh, maybe she was just, taking a break, doing some drugs, and now she's back. So that's what happened with Eileen. Days after this annulment, days after Eileen went back on the streets, she got news that Keith died. Her brother died of throat cancer at just age 21. Yeah. So she went back for the funeral, and after that she came back to Florida. But it was very hard on her. She didn't even know Keith was sick. And I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of times, just people in general, but especially people with abandonment issues, we view untimely death, like death of a loved one, especially untimely death, as a form of abandonment. Like, logically, of course, we know it's not like they deliberately died so they can get away from us, but it feels like that. Like, it feels like, how can you leave me? During this time, she was obviously not right. In 1981, she gets arrested for robbing a convenience store at gunpoint in a bikini. It's like she was wearing a bikini and she just came in with a gun and robbed them. And when she was arrested, she was walking down the street, still in her bikini, barefoot, and she was just walking with her gun in one hand and $35 in cash in the other.
Did she take drugs?
She was alcoholic.
She never took drugs.
It doesn't specify like what drugs she took, but it is said that she did abuse alcohol specifically, but also some drugs. But we don't know what drugs she took. Yeah. Well, so she was obviously unhinged. I don't know why. Like, police didn't think, maybe there's something wrong with her, maybe we need to get her help. But this was the 1960s, so they just arrested her and they put her in prison for 3 years. And during those 3 years, Eileen started going by the name Lee. Like, she's not Eileen anymore. Just call me Lee. And she discovered that she was lesbian. Like, a lot of people say going to jail turns you gay. Like, that's not how it works. But Yeah, like a lot of people say that. Like if you go to prison, you're gonna like it turns you gay because you only have people of the same sex. That's not how it works. But for Eileen, the theory that psychologists have is that she has never had the freedom to explore her own sexuality because she was using sex as a form of transaction. Going to prison actually kind of set her free, and so she started exploring, and she realized, oh, I like women. Yeah. In 1986, post-prison, Eileen meets this woman named Tyra Moore. Tyra Moore was 24, and she was working as a maid at a motel. And they started living together at Fairview Motel because that's where Tyra was working. And everything was just peachy because everyone loved each other in the end. So Fairview Motel is in Florida, near Daytona. It's in Daytona. So this is Florida. Daytona is like one of the beaches. It's on the side. And there's a military base nearby. So that's where Eileen gets most of her clients. So what do you think happens in 1989? She starts getting fewer and fewer clients because the military is getting deployed. Because in 1990, there was a history pop quiz. The Gulf War.
The Gulf.
Yeah.
Iraq.
Yeah. So everyone was getting deployed. Eileen has no more clients. They're all off fighting a war. And Tyra told her, well, reportedly, Tyra told her, like, don't come back if you don't have rent. Like, I'm not about to move out of my motel room. But Eileen didn't want that. Eileen is like, oh, I finally found someone I love. I just want to spend all of my time with this woman I love at home. But she has to go out and get work, and she just spends a lot of time on the highway. And one day, November 30th of 1989, Eileen goes on the highway and she sees this unfamiliar car pull over. So it's a good thing, right? Because it means a new client. The driver was Richard. What is Richard? The driver was Richard Mallory. I was trying to say Mallory, and then I said Richard. Was Richard Mallory. Richard! I said Richard again. Richard was Richard Mallory, who is a 51-year-old electronics store owner. So they drive into like a wooded area, right, so that you won't get caught in the act by the police. But what Eileen didn't know is that Richard just got out of prison for serving 10 years for sexual assault.
Oh, he is a criminal.
Yeah, he's a sex offender. And we only have Eileen's side of the story for the rest of this. So she said that they started drinking some vodka, but once Richard got drunk, he became a total different person. He said that he was a sadist and that he could not be turned on unless Eileen was in pain. Then he proceeds to bound her hands and tied her to the steering wheel and raped her and sodomized her. And sodomy is like you rape someone but up the butt. Yeah. He also told her, like, you're gonna do anything I want or I'm gonna kill you. So she decided that she had to either fight or die. And when Richard left the car to head to the trunk, she somehow got free and she got her pistol from her purse. And Richard opened the passenger side door to stop her. She shot him in the chest once. But then she's like, okay, I can't call the cops. I'm gonna get arrested for attempted murder and I'm a prostitute. So I'm just gonna kill him and get rid of his body. That's the easiest. So she shots him 3 more times in the chest. She takes out his wallet. She takes out the cash, but she leaves the wallet. And he drags her back into the car, drives to a nearby dump site, and dumps his body. And she just covers it with a carpet. But he doesn't get found until in a very long time, until a long time later. She drove home and she shows Tyra the stack of cash she has, which is more than enough to pay rent. And she's like, hey, look at all this money, and we have a new Cadillac. Tyra was like, what would you do if your girlfriend just came home one day like that?
Why you became so rich?
Yeah.
What did you do?
But, well, she's already doing sex work. So.
But actually, 不用钱。
对啊。Yeah.
但是你又
Would you like immediately think she killed someone?
she drove a new car home.
Yeah. So Tara was like, "What the fuck happened?" And Eileen told her everything. It was like, "I killed this guy, but he was trying to rape me." Right?
Oh, she's honest.
So yeah, she's honest. Tara is like, "Okay, we can keep the valuables." She has no problem keeping the money and the valuables because she took like his valuables as well, not just the money, not just the cash. And she was like, "But we cannot keep the car because the police is going to trace it back to us." They drove to Ormond Beach, which is like 40 minutes north of Fairview Hotel, and abandoned the car. And they hiked back home. And the next morning after they dumped the car, police actually found Richard Mallory's car. They run the plates, they know that it's his car. And they found his wallet, so there's an ID, right? But they didn't really have any reason to suspect that he was dead. And he's a convict, so he thought, oh, he's probably just drunk or hungover, sleeping somewhere. And he left his car here, so we're just gonna wait until he comes pick it up. And meanwhile, Eileen was really happy because she made rent, and she has all these valuables. She doesn't have to work because she made rent, and she can spend all of her time at home with Tyra. Among the things she stole from Richard, one of them was a camera. His camera, so that's like a big ticket item. It's what she can get the most money out of. She took it to the pawn shop, and the pawn shop owner was like, "Okay, this is really expensive, so we're gonna have to see some ID and take your thumbprint, just in case this comes up as stolen." And Eileen was just like, "Yeah, sure, cool, okay." Doing it like it's just not very smart, but she did, yeah. So she did give her ID and thumbprint.
Who's not afraid? Yeah, sure.
And the police were not onto her at all. Yeah, it was just really hot. Like, there was a, because, you know, these kind of tofu, they just suck up this whole pack of soup inside.
Oh.
Yeah.
Allergic to seafood. So it was.
Like sometimes it's not that bad, but sometimes it's really bad. So I'm afraid. Also, yeah, it depends on how well I have been sleeping and stuff like that. I have not been sleeping very well.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, because my immune system.
我以为是其实可以，一些不行。
No, like sometimes I can eat salmon, sometimes I can't.
因为理论上这种有壳的东西，或者是虾会比较容易引起过敏。
Yeah.
鱼应该还好。
或者吃了有小鱼干的面，然后就立刻肿起来。
哦，小鱼干也会。
On December 13th, 1989, which was 2 weeks later, a group of locals were just looking for scrap metal at the junkyard. You know, you can sell scrap metal for money. And they see this bird just obsessing over a carpet. So they're like, why is that bird obsessed with the carpet? I think it was a buzzard. It's like a bigger bird. I think they prey on smaller animals or they maybe eat dead bodies. So this buzzard was obsessing over this carpet. They thought it was weird. They went over, they lifted the carpet, and they found Richard's body. It was badly decomposed, and his hands were partially eaten by animals, so they called the cops. The cops came, they found that the cause of death was one of the bullets that had pierced his lungs. And they also determined that his body was moved post-mortem, right? Like it means he was moved after he was dead because he obviously didn't die there. There's no blood around, and that the killer is probably a man because it's really difficult to move a body. You know, it's really heavy. Have you ever tried? No, I guess so.
What years?
1989.
Oh.
December.
那时候 DNA 技术还没有那么。
Yeah, they're like, okay, someone moved this man post-mortem. It has to be a guy because it's so hard to move a body. You know, if you're trying to pick me up and like with my consent, I would work with you and I would be in a position that it's easy to be picked up. My muscles would also kick in, but a dead person obviously cannot do that. So, yeah, so it's heavier. Like it's heavier.
Was it fat?
I don't think he was okay. They just think it's a guy, okay? Because they moved a body, even if they found a woman.
他们应该会判断一个女生不太可能。
Yeah, it's just hard for a woman to move a body, is what they thought. Richard was found shirtless, and his pockets were turned inside out. So they also think this is probably a robbery gone wrong. So they're looking for a male robber. But Eileen had no idea this was happening. This opened a brand new chapter for her. She had felt powerless her whole life, but when she killed Richard, she felt powerful, right? And then she also had no self-worth, but now that Tyra loves her, she's like, oh, maybe I have a little bit of self-respect. Maybe sex shouldn't just be a transactional thing. All of these men are just using me, like those teenage boys at the pits, they were just using me, and they're not going to do it anymore. So good for her. But her conclusion was kind of fucked up. Her conclusion, we have a lot of male serial killers who go out there killing prostitutes, and they think that they're cleaning up the streets, they are killing sinful women for God. Eileen is kind of like, she flipped the script. Okay, she thinks that, hey, I'm just here trying to make a living, but these men, they are abusive pieces of shit, and I'm gonna kill them. And I am doing the world good. Like, I am helping the world get rid of scum. So what she's thinking is she's killing human scum, right? And she is profiting off it, which she considers as her reward for killing bad people. And she also gets to spend more time with Tyra because she doesn't have to go out there and get more clients. She can just kill one client a month and that's enough, right?
Is what she say?
Is what she was thinking. Is she did a lot of interviews, so psychologists kind of came to this conclusion, like this is what she believed, because later on she was very inconsistent in her interviews. She kind of, we can tell she's a little bit cuckoo. She went a little bit cuckoo.
Oh, can you bring the scissors? Let's have this. The scissors.
你要放的是
Yeah. It smells really good. Actually, it's dripping again.
I don't even know. It's turkey. It's open.
像贡丸东西。
Yeah, but it's made from turkey. Let's put some of this.
鸡肉。
I've been dying to try.
Okay.
Meatball.
Yeah,
Turkey
meatballs. 1990, right? Eileen is now 34, and she has this brand new business model that allows her to make a lot of money. And, like, she just comes back a lot with, like, these camera, jewelry, even sometimes wedding rings, and a lot of cash. And Tyra kind of knew, right, from the whole Richard thing, but she doesn't ask, like, where this comes from. She just, she just pretends. Yeah, I don't know if it's like, maybe it's hard for her to accept it, right? And what are you, like, you don't want to know that your loved one is doing something like this. But also, maybe it's for plausible deniability, because if she doesn't know, then police can't really charge her. But I don't want to say, because Tyra, I don't want to get sued. She's really careful, like, she's really trying to protect her own reputation. I don't want to get sued. So, we don't know what Tyra is thinking, but she's okay with this influx of income, right? Eileen kind of indicated this, but we don't know if Tyra really demanded like a more financially stable life or a richer life. But psychologists said that even if she didn't, it is very possible that because Eileen has abandonment issues, and she is also later on suspected by a lot of mental health specialists to have borderline personality disorder. Yeah, so people with BPD would expect instability. So basically, if she expects Tyra to leave her. So no one ever loved her unconditionally, so it's impossible for Tyra to want nothing. Tyra must want something from her. So it must be, maybe she wants money. And around this time, Eileen even proposes to Tyra. Same-sex marriage is not legal, but you can propose. So Tyra said yes, and now they're engaged. On June 1st of 1990, a surveyor is basically like a guy who examines land to make sure that you can do construction. Yeah. So a surveyor named Matthew Cookins calls Brooks County Police Brooks County is in Georgia, so it's right across Florida state line. Calls the Brooks County police station and says, "Oh my God, I found a body. It's a white male that it looks to be in his mid-40s. He has 6 bullet wounds in his chest, and he's wearing nothing but a baseball cap." And police initially, when they got this call, they're like, Matthew, we think it's you. Because Matthew Cocking is known to be pretty aggressive and he carried a gun with him all the time. So police thought like maybe he killed someone and he was just going to pretend that he found a body. But when police got there, the body was already pretty decomposed. Like it didn't just happen. Like it's not like Matthew just shot him and called the police. It's been a while. Okay, the 6 bullet wounds were all done with a .22 caliber gun. They had no idea who this guy is, right? So this is John Doe. Oh, the soup. The soup actually has this really strong seafood taste now. And I'm not saying it as a bad thing. Like it's actually not bad. Like the clams, I can recognize it makes the soup taste more flavorful. To the shin. Right, I don't know, don't you think? It's pretty obvious in the vegetables. That's John Doe number 1. On June 6th, Florida has their own John Doe. This John Doe was found in Pasco County, Florida. It was heavily decomposed. It was so decomposed that there were no fingerprints, and they could not determine the time of death. All they knew was that there were 9 .22 caliber bullet wounds in his chest. So at this point, a Pasco County detective named Tom Muck was thinking, this seems familiar. So he calls up an investigator named Marvin Paget from Citrus County, Florida, and he was like, hey, like, don't you think these 2 cases are kind of similar? You know, badly decomposed, body was moved, .22 caliber. Maybe you should be on the lookout. So with this hunch, he calls the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, but they didn't have enough evidence to just launch, like to have a whole full investigation yet. On June 7th, Georgia identifies their John Doe, the one that Matthew found. They identified him as David Spears from Bradenton, Florida. He was 43, and they have no idea how he ended up in Georgia, like across state line. Right, it's 3 hours away from his home, and again, it was moved, and he was stripped naked except for the baseball cap, right? So they think, okay, this is another robbery gone wrong, and we're looking for a man. So they kind of make connecting the dots, but they still think they're looking for a man. On July 4th, which is Independence Day in the U.S., so it's a national holiday, Eileen and Tyra were just speeding down the street in a gray Pontiac Sunbird from one of Eileen's victims. A witness named Rhonda Bailey said she was just sitting and chilling on her porch, and she sees this car going crazy, and it just suddenly shoots off the road and crashed into the bushes in front of her house, just right in front of her. And then 2 women came out. They were fighting. One of them, who was later on identified to be Eileen, was hurt, like her arm was hurt from the crash, so it was bloody. She was yelling at Tyra. They both had beers in their hands. They both had beers, and they chugged the beer, threw the beer cans into the woods, then they pushed the car out of the bushes, got back in, and just floored it. They just drove away, and the car was just already completely messed up. The window shield was so smashed that you can't see through it. And so the car just gave up. They went 90 meters and then the car gave up. Okay. Then the 2 women came out of the car and just ran away. Imagine you're just sitting outside chilling on a national holiday and you see this. I would be like, what the was that? So Rhonda, of course, Rhonda calls the authorities. And the person who responded is a volunteer for the fire department. His name was Hubert Hewitt, which is really fun to say. Hubert Hewitt. Yeah. Hubert responded to this call, and he was driving to the scene when he sees just 2 women walking down, and they're obviously hurt, right? He sees Tyra and Eileen, and he's like, oh, it's probably them. So he rolls down his window and asks them, like, hey, are you guys You know, the women from that crazy accident we just got told about? Because I don't know what's going on, but it sounds a little bit illegal. No, I'm just kidding. He didn't say that, but he asked them if that was them, and he said Eileen just scowled at him. Like she was just like, I don't even know how to scowl at someone. How do you scowl at someone? So she just scowled at him. So he was like, okay, and he rolled up his window and just left. Yeah. When he got to the scene, like he just drove a little bit down the road, and then he sees the car. He sees that the windows are smashed, which is expected, and the exterior was dented, which is also expected. But then he looks in, and there were blood stains everywhere in the car, and he was like, okay, she was hurt, but she's not that hurt. So, of course, he calls it in for identification, and he found that this car belonged to Peter Sims. Peter Sims was a 65-year-old retired guy who was working at a Christian outreach ministry. My manager is texting me. Let's ignore him for now. I'm gonna cut this out. What if he sees this? He's not gonna see this. I work at, oh, by the way, yeah, I work at night as an English teacher. I don't know if I mentioned it. That's why I'm doing like all these captions and stuff. It's white. It's kind of, you know how fish balls are whiter than like goat balls? Those kind of like meatballs are usually made from pork, so they're a little bit redder. This one is really white. Because it's turkey. Yeah, but it's just white. Let's see how it tastes. Maybe I should do it. Hot. Let's do a little bit more of the story first. Okay, so Hubert was pretty sure that these two women that's kind of unhinged that he just ran into were the ones that were in this accident. I'm sorry, my mouth is not functioning correctly after I bit into the gong ball. Okay. And now they are suspected for the disappearance of Peter Sims, right? Because Peter Sims is actually gone. Like, they found his car, and then they realized, oh, this guy has been missing. So he provided a description to the police. Their description was sent to every police station in the country. But Eileen had, like, no idea this was going on, so she just carries on as usual. They're just going to bars, killing Johns, and stuff like that. On July 30th, a 50-year-old sausage delivery man named Troy Boris from Ocala, Florida, left the store for delivery, and he never came back. Like, it was late in the evening, and he wasn't back, but he was supposed to be back in the afternoon. So I think he's definitely a really nice guy because his manager was panicking. If I were late to work, I don't think my manager would panic. Well, it did happen once, and he like called. I have only been late to work once, and he called me like several times, but it didn't go through, and he just stopped calling. Yeah. I had food poisoning that time, so okay. His manager was like, Troy is never late. Like, he would have been on time. He should have been back by now, even if there's traffic, right? What's wrong? And the manager calls around, and they realize Troy never even made it to the last few stops of his delivery. So this is weird. They call the police, and the authorities at 4 a.m. found Troy's truck abandoned on the side near State Road 19. On August 4th, they finally found his body, and I think it's finally cold enough for me to... I think it's pretty good. It does have like this sweetness to it that usually you have in poultry. I do think chicken and turkey taste the same. It's just... It's sweeter. But I don't know, maybe it's the soup. It's more tender. It's still, that's gonna fly into my face. He's trying to blind me with a turkey meatball. Yeah, just fucking do it. On August 4th, they finally found Troy's badly decomposed body. The body was so decomposed that his wife had to ID his body with his wedding band because Eileen didn't take it. Like, first of all, I didn't know that your body can decompose so much in just 5 days. But maybe because it's Florida and it's really hot and it's summer, It's July, it's August. Can you imagine that? I don't think I would be able to do that, like IDing someone I love from their ring. I would be like in denial. I'd be like, someone stole his ring and died. That's not him. Anyway, the Marion County Police, who was in charge of this case, they did not make the connection to the other cases for whatever reason. But Eileen later on confessed to this, and she claimed that it was self-defense. And they're saying, like, okay, it's possible that he picked her up for her services on his lunch break. But his family and all of the people who knew him were like, no, that's impossible. Troy loves his wife, and Troy is just not the kind of person. And we know, sometimes that's not 100% reliable, but from what we see, it's more likely that Troy saw her hitchhiking and was just trying to help her. On September 12th, in Marion County, again, they found another body of Charles Dick Humphreys. This guy. He was 56 years old. He was a former police chief, and he is a retired Air Force major. So I really think this probably got the police going. Yeah, but he was found the morning after he disappeared, so relatively quick compared to other victims. And he was shot in the head and torso 7 times, also a .22 caliber. I really think Eileen is just really getting really bad at choosing her victims at this point. Like in the beginning, Richard Mallory is a convict. Police are probably not bending over backwards to find his killer, but the former police chief, yeah, they're gonna want to find out what happened there. Charles' family also said that it is highly unlikely that he would look for a sex worker. They said that he even worked for the health and rehabilitative services, and he specified in helping abused and injured children. Oh. A lot of times people are different, like in front, like behind closed doors, right? But I don't think that's the case for Charles. Like, he probably just tried to help her again, like hitchhiking. She's hitchhiking. People suspect, like at this point, maybe it was Tyra and Eileen's relationship. There were some problems, so she's just starting to be very not selective. She's just taking it out on her victims. On November 18th, they found another body. It was 60-year-old Walter Gina Antonio, and Captain Steve Vinegar, the Marion County's sheriff's criminal investigation, he finally decided, okay, this was the same killer. So they formed a multi-agency task force because some of them are in Florida and then a lot of them are in different counties. So it was supposed to be different police stations in charge. And then there was one in Georgia, right? But they're saying, okay, this has to be the same killer. So they have a multi-agency task force so that they can all work together, because usually police are like, okay, this is my case. This is not your jurisdiction, right? But they think it's the same guy. But they're still kind of looking for a guy. But the last 3 victims were all seem to be killed by hitchhikers. And nobody is stopping for hitchhikers anymore because everybody is thinking, like, we're going to get killed. Everybody knows about these cases. So Vinegar was thinking, this killer must look very harmless. And typically, women are considered to be more harmless. And he thinks of the 2 women from the Peter Sims case. So they published the police sketches to just every newspaper in Florida. So of course Eileen and Tyra sees this, and they freak the fuck out. Eileen goes to Rose Bay Bridge and she throws her .22 caliber off the bridge. They actually do not recover the gun. They never found the gun. And
Do you want to have some vermicelli?
Eileen threw her gun away, and Tyra went to Pennsylvania to stay with her sister. Like, she just ran away. I don't want anything to do with this, so Eileen was left alone again. In mid-December, police finally get some leads. They receive a call from a guy who rents out trailers, in trailer parks. He rents out trailers, and he said that he rented a trailer to Eileen and Tyra a year earlier. Like, he identified them from the police sketch, which I really don't know how he did it, because the police sketch just looked nothing like a human. Right? But he did, and he actually was able to give them Tyra Moore's full name, but he only knew the other woman as Lee. So remember, Eileen was going by Lee ever since she got out of prison. And because they have Tyra Moore, right, they find that she was working at Fairview Motel, so they get there. But the day that they got this tip and the day that they got to Fairview Motel, Eileen moved out. Like, she just happened to move out on the same day. And they're back to square one. But Captain Mittiger was like, everyone was robbed. Let's check local pawn shops. So they went to pawn shops and they found Richard Mallory's camera. And remember, they had the thumbprint. So when they found Peter Sim's car, they actually found a palm print on the car, and that matched to Eileen's thumbprint from the camera. And I know some of you are going to say, like, oh, Eileen has been to jail, why don't they have their fingerprints? They do have her fingerprints, but at the time they didn't have like just a computer system where they could just run it and see if it matches anyone. So they actually have to have a suspect to match it to. And this wasn't automated until 1999. Like, this system, this computer system. So this is 9 years before they had this. But in 1915, police already started using fingerprints. They just needed to have someone to match it to. But now that they know who they are and they know about Eileen, they ask around and they find out, okay, she has a favorite bar called The Last Resort, which is so ironic. The Last Resort means like the last thing you turn to when you have nowhere to go and then you have no options. Eileen was homeless again. She was just sleeping in the parking lot of the bar, like in an abandoned car. And on January 8th of 1991, she was drinking at the Last Resort, and 2 drug dealers named Bucket and Drums. What amazing names. Okay, named Bucket and Drums came in and started talking to her. And they even bought her a beer, so she was like, yeah, these people are cool. They got me a beer. The next day, Eileen stayed in her car and she just slept until 11 when the bar opens. And she went into The Last Resort. She bought a beer and she started asking around for quarters because she wanted to play her favorite song on the jukebox. So for all of you young people out there who don't know what a jukebox is, I'm going to put a picture of it here. It's a box on the floor, and there are a lot of discs in there. So you go over, you put in coins. Do young people even know what discs are? It's this shiny round thing, okay? And then there's music. There's music on it. You can read stuff onto it. So there are a lot of discs in there. You push a button and then it shuffles to the disc of the song that you chose, and it starts playing the song that you want, okay? So they don't have Spotify. She wanted to play her favorite song on the jukebox. She was asking for quarters, and then she see Buckets and Drums come in again. And she was like, hey, the 2 drug dealers are back. They bought her another beer, and they gave her a quarter for the jukebox. Then later, they invited Eileen outside for a cigarette. So Eileen checked her beer and went out with them, and this is when 6 police officers came up to her and tackled her to the ground, and she got arrested. Bucket and Drums were undercover police officers. So I just want to know, like, who in the police force were like, we're going to name them Bucket and Drums. Are these just really popular drug dealers' name in the 90s? Like, what? It's so weird. But okay, so January 9th, 1991, Eileen was taken into custody. And they didn't have a whole lot of concrete evidence against her. So they're like, we're going to need a confession. But Eileen wasn't talking. 2 police officers from the multi-agency task force they flew up to Pennsylvania to see Tyra. And Tyra was like, oh, Tyra told them, like, I don't know what happened. I kind of suspected something was fishy, but I told Eileen to never tell me about it, so I don't know anything. And the police were okay with this because the police didn't want Tyra. Police wanted Eileen. So they told Tyra, if you would testify against Eileen and you would convince Eileen to confess, we're going to give you full immunity. So if you have full immunity, that basically just means you're not going to get charged for anything. They can't send you to jail for anything. Yeah. So Tara is like, sure, I'm gonna do that. I'm scared. She went back to Daytona with the police. She stayed at a motel where she called Eileen, and she started saying like, oh my god, the police came to me, I'm so scared, what should I do? And initially Eileen was just comforting her, but then Eileen kind of realized that something was weird, and she asks Tyra, like, is there somebody else with you in the room? At this point, the police are like, shit, our plan is not gonna work. She found out, she's not gonna say anything. But Eileen goes on to say, and this is a quote, I'm gonna read it. Eileen goes on to say, quote, just go ahead and let them know what they want to know or anything, and I will cover for you because you are innocent. I'm not going to let you go to jail. Look, if I need to confess, I will. And she did the next day. She confessed to all 7 murders, including Peter Sims, who the police actually has no evidence to charge her because they never found Peter Sims' body. She really loved Tyra. She genuinely did. Yeah, but does Tyra love her? I'm not sure. We're gonna find out. So, over the next year, the police, they were preparing for trial, the prosecution, right? And Eileen was notorious throughout the entire country. Producers, publishers, they all smelled the story and they came knocking on her door. And Eileen sold her life rights, and she was hoping that she could make millions from this. But Florida has a law against that. Florida prohibits criminals from profiting off their own crimes. So she can't do that. And this got kind of controversial because a lot of police officers did. A lot of police officers on the task force sold their life rights to these same producers and publishers and got paid very well for their experience working on Eileen's case. Yeah. Eileen was still giving interviews, right? All her life, people ignored her. Now finally people want to listen to her. Everyone was looking at her, everyone knew her, so she just told her story to anyone that would listen. But this is where psychiatrists and mental health specialists think things are a little bit off, because every time she retold the story, it's a little bit different. Like sometimes she says that she killed the men in cold blood. Sometimes she said it was self-defense. Like, it was just a little bit all over the place. I think the truth is somewhere in between. Psychiatrists think that I also think, like Richard Mallory, I really think Richard Mallory probably did assault her, and then that just kind of kicked things off. A lot of psychiatrists believe that the way she chose her victims was that her victims triggered her, because all of her victims are very similar in age or appearance to her grandfather, who was the first man that raped her, who sexually assaulted her when she was very, very young. And they think that maybe they did something, said something where they just look a certain way to trigger her past memory of trauma, and she just killed them. Yeah. In the end, police actually only had enough evidence to tie her to the murder of Richard Mallory. But even if you have a confession, you need evidence, okay? Because what if this confession was coerced? Or they're lying for someone else. So coerced means it was like forced with violence. Like maybe they got beat into a confession, or they're just delirious, or they're not mentally competent. So you need evidence. But everyone, and I mean everyone, has already heard Eileen's full confession to all those 7 murders, right? So she is already dubbed the Damsel of Death. And her trial lasted for 2 weeks. And for some reason, like, they never told the jury that Richard Mallory was a convicted sex offender. Like, they didn't know that he has a history of sexual assault. So Eileen's defense was that it was self-defense. And it just got thrown out the window because they didn't know that he was a sex offender. So they're like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. And the prosecutor just made it seem like Eileen was this evil woman who killed this innocent, middle-aged man who had no defense. Harmless, middle-aged man who was actually a sex offender. Like, I'm not saying she should have gotten away with this, but I'm saying, is that really a fair trial? It's not a fair trial, I think. Like, she should pay for what she did, but that's not a fair trial. During the trial, the state called Tyra as a witness, and she said that
Eileen was a dangerous person and she was in fear the entire time she was with Eileen. Eileen, when she heard this, she was completely heartbroken because she really loved Tyra. And imagine you just hear this woman that you really love and you probably even killed for, and she's just telling the whole world she was only with you because she was scared of you. And I assume she thought Tyra left her back, right? But now she knows that Tyra probably did not. And on January 27th, Eileen was put on the stand and she was described as being completely despondent at this point. Like she had nothing to live for anymore. And she went on the stand and she said, "I hate people. I am a murderer and I would absolutely do it again." So, of course, she was convicted. It only took the jury 2 hours to convict her of first-degree murder. And 5 days later, she was sentenced to death. And Eileen just really wanted to die at this point. Like the year later, she recanted. She said that it was not self-defense. Yes, I killed him in cold blood. I was never assaulted, and all of my crimes are robbery motivated. She waived her rights to an appeal, and she just wants to die. Like she just wants to get executed as soon as possible. But she seemed to be so mentally unstable, so she was put on death row for 10 years because you can't execute someone if they are mentally incompetent. Yeah, her execution just kept getting delayed. And during this time, remember Dawn Watkins, like her friend from high school? Yeah, so Dawn Watkins actually stayed in touch with Eileen, and she would write her letters, she would visit her in jail, visit her in prison. And Dawn actually, she said this in an interview, and I think it's very touching, so I'm going to read what she said. So she said, quote, she, like Eileen, she didn't have to come clean with me. I didn't even like talking about it. I did not judge her for it. I was there to be her friend, unquote. She said that she never wanted to judge Eileen for all of the bad things that she did, because if like Dawn judged Eileen for this, then they can't be friends anymore, and Dawn didn't want that. Like she wanted to be able to stay friends with her and be there with her, and then we know that Dawn was there for all of the trauma that Eileen had been through, so she probably kind of see where this came from. I think you can have sympathy. You can have sympathy for a serial killer, right? And then, so I think she had sympathy for Eileen. In 2002, 3 psychiatrists evaluated Eileen, and they found her mentally competent to be executed. So her temporary stay of execution was lifted. So they were going to execute her. And on the morning of her execution, she was interviewed, and they said that in the beginning she just seemed to be in good spirits. And then she kept saying that she's okay with it. Like, I'm okay with being executed. Like, she kept saying that. She was asked this, and she said, yes, I was betrayed by everyone I ever trusted, and that's why I didn't care if I was executed and leave this planet. Yeah, so she really wanted to die, but then she went on to say that she was set up by the police. She said that they knew who she was from the very beginning because she left fingerprints everywhere when she killed Richard Mallory, so how could they not know, right? And she said that the police knew, but decided to let her be free so that she would keep killing people and just terrible people and clean up the streets for them. And when the time was right, finally they arrested her and they can make money off her life rights. Which is really unhinged, but then I also can kind of see where she's coming from. If I'm a little bit crazy and this happened to me, I would probably come up with this story as well. Yeah, right? Because they did make a whole load of money off her.
Yep.
She also said that the police tortured her this entire time. Okay, it gets crazier. She said that the police has been torturing her for the past 5 years, but not through like police brutality or violence. No, she said that they were sending sonic pressure through the mirror in her cell, and every time she tried to tell the truth, the sonic waves would squeeze her skull and she would have shock waves throughout her body. And 3 psychiatrists found her mentally competent to be executed. Nobody thinks she was mentally competent to be executed. Like, I'm not an expert, that doesn't sound mentally competent to me. I wouldn't even trust her with the pudding. like pudding. I just feel like pudding is the most harmless thing I can think of. So on October 9th of 2002, she was executed, and she really did have famous last words. Like, it was very famous. I'm going to read it to you guys. She said, "I'd just like to say, I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie Big Mothership and all. I'll be back." I have like absolutely no idea what that means either. Okay, I googled it. So it turns out that the Rock was used to refer to God and Jesus in the Bible. So that's why she also mentioned Jesus. And there's an alien movie called Independence Day, and in it there's like this big mothership that belonged to the aliens. So I can make sense of like these two connections, but I'm not sure what like the whole sentence is supposed to mean. And many people feel the same way, so they were like, oh, this is just further evidence that she was not mentally competent to be executed. She died 9:47 a.m. of lethal injection. And after she was executed, she was cremated, and her ashes were given to Don Hopkins. And Don scattered Eileen's ashes under a walnut tree in her backyard. So like she got sent back to Michigan. And that's the end of her story. But this story actually makes me very, very upset because I feel like we watched society create a serial killer. Because Eileen is described by most people as just this wicked monster. And then there's the other extreme where people kind of formed a cult around her, and then they think of her as a hero who killed sex offenders and the like victims of sexual assault, think that, you know, we should worship her and stuff. And I don't think either is right. Like, I think both sides are really crazy. She had her problems. Yeah, but then I also think, like, you know how some serial killers are just born deranged, and then you hear stories of them as a baby, and then you're like, yeah, that's a serial killer. And then he'd be killing little puppies. He's gonna grow up to be a serial killer. But Eileen's childhood, you just think like she was a normal girl, but she was abused.
She has a tragic childhood.
Yeah, she had a tragic childhood. I agree. And then she just kind of got pushed to the point where I think this is the only way that she felt like she could cope with society. I'm not saying that what she did was right. Like, it's terrible, right? But if she had, like, I kind of just wish she had help. She got help earlier, then none of this would have happened.
It looks like she had no choice.
Yeah, right? She definitely, I believe she felt like she had no choice.
Yeah.
But it's also, you know, even if you have no choice, killing people is never the way to go, okay?
No way to go.
Yeah, it's not the way to go. But sometimes I would hear cases like this and I would just be like, oh shit, if I were them, I would probably do it. If I were in that situation.
If she killed Richard.
Richard, yeah.
The first man, the first time. 这是自我防。
Yeah, it is self-defense. But the rest.
I think 因为他对他的就是，因为他觉得他自己是妓女，所以他不会被想起。
Yeah.
他觉得就是不应该，他不觉得就是应该去自杀。
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like, yeah, society definitely also played a role in this. So Leo was saying she felt like she couldn't turn herself in because she's a prostitute and nobody would believe her. So she might as well just keep killing. Yeah, I just hope she got help. That's all I can say. I don't know, let us know your thoughts down below. And we will see you guys next time with another crime. And hopefully things go as I planned and I can do some keto food that I cook. I'm talking with my mouth full, I'm sorry, don't come at me. We're going to continue to finish this food. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye!
Bye.